Good evening, good morning. Welcome to week 7 for PSSL 6240, Political Violence and Terrorism. Before we go with the preview and review of last week, I just want to cover some announcements. First, this Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Adobe Connect session. I'll give you a login this week for it. If you're not going to be able to make it, please let me know as soon as possible. But again, the Adobe Connect session is on Thursday. Topics we're going to cover are exam prep, what's going to be on the exam, prep for the last paper, what I'm expecting from you, positives, negatives, as well as I want to talk 30 minutes job talk, careers in the federal government, careers in the Department of Defense, intel community, state and local level. The key for this Adobe Connect session is to have your questions ready. Have your questions related to the exam. I'm not going to go over the whole class. I'm going to pretty much use it to answer questions. So have questions ready for the exam, questions ready related to the last paper, and most importantly, questions, your career questions. What do you want? How do you think this program is going to advance your career? What do you want to do? A lot of you are in the military or transitioning out of the military. How do you transition from a military career to a civilian career? What are the pitfalls? What are the advantages, disadvantages? So have those questions ready for me for Thursday, so I can answer them and your classmates can give insights that you might not already have. So that's the first announcement. Second announcement, I want to apologize for the outage that occurred on Wednesday. I don't know why it happened, but it affected me, certainly affected you all, and let me apologize on behalf of the university for that. That's the first time that's ever happened to me, and I don't think that we'll have that issue again, at least for this course, and most likely not for the rest of your time here in this program. And then thirdly, the papers, some of you have already got them back. I'll have the rest of them marked Monday and Tuesday, so you'll have some comments before we go into the last paper. And if you have any questions on my grades, please bring them up at the Adobe Connect session as well. So with that being said, I just want to review last week. I had a lot of interesting discussions on the discussion boards. I shouldn't be surprised at this by now, but I'm kind of a little surprised that everyone's very harsh on the intelligence community related to counterterrorism. Most people on the discussion boards said we should have known about 9/11. We should have known about Fort Hood. We should have known about Boston. We should have known about the underwear bomber. And a lot of you take the intelligence community to task for not knowing that. Some of you have valid points, but there's Monday morning quarterbacking is probably the easiest type of quarterbacking. So I just want to kind of bring that up. Just an example, 9/11, bin Laden determined to attack in the United States. The Bush administration got a lot of criticism for this, but that's not terrorism. That's not an intelligence report. That's a one over the world that gave no specifics, no credible threats, nothing that the president could turn around. And in fact, one of the exercises that you can do in your last paper is if, let's say you get that. Let's say you're the intel briefer to the president and you give him that brief. And he's going to turn around and say, what do you want me to do? Okay, so that's, anyone could say bin Laden willing to attack in the United States. Very little of them can really think of some solid recommendations that you can give to a policymaker that could actually be effective in dealing with the counterterrorism problem. With that being said, a lot of you brought up some good points that we should, even if we didn't have specificity on the 9/11 threat, it wasn't very hard, it's not very expensive to implement some of the countermeasures that could have prevented 9/11. The FBI could have done routine background checks on flight schools and students in flight schools quite easily. Again, there might have been enough on the radar to say, okay, just do a check. It's not very hard. It's not very intrusive. It's not very expensive. It's not like you have to ground every flight for a day. Do background checks for a day or two. That could have been executed quite easily. You could have, if you were aware that there was going to be some sort of plot against civil aviation. You could have required air marshals, instead of on 5% of flights, to be on 15% of flights. It's not very expensive, not very hard. And if you have air marshals on 15 to 20% of flights, that probably would have had a better chance of interdicting a 9/11 and maybe even deter the 9/11 hijackers from executing their plot. You know, you could have ordered cockpit doors, 10% of cockpit doors in the United States to be reinforced. That's, again, not very expensive, a little bit more expensive than the other ones, but again, that's a very unintrusive way to prevent a 9/11. So, yeah, I kind of two sides of the coin there. I'll let you decide whether the intelligence community should have known about 9/11. And again, the documentaries, particularly the Nova NSA documentary, is pretty damning on some of the elements related to 9/11 or some of the interagency bungling that might have occurred. And I'll let you guys decide again, are those just normal interagency bungling? Are they structural? Are they personality based? But that kind of covers the 9/11 intelligence failures. Post 9/11 intelligence failures, again, a lot of you are very hard on the Fort Hood shooter, the underwear bomber, Boston, that we should have known. I'm going to probably reveal some of my political leanings here, and I'll say, we'll start with the Fort Hood shooting. A lot of you said we should have known. But as I said in the lecture, Hassan did not do anything illegal. He might have done things that were against his oath as an officer, and he may or may not have reached the threshold of being drummed out of the service. But even communicating with a Lockwood, we could talk to legal experts that at the time and in early 2009, that may not have risen to the threshold to arrest him. And in fact, most of the FBI people that you talk to will say that it did not lead to the threshold of him being arrested. So we can write a 100-page report and criticize the Army and the Department of Defense, and it's good to do that. But at the end of the day, there was no legal restrictions. And even if we drummed him out of the military, Hassan, he still could have accessed U.S. military outside of Fort Hood. It's not very hard to go to a Luby's or a McDonald's or something during lunch hour and kill 15 people. He could have still purchased a firearm. And I'm going to, again, my political leanings, the same people who are going to say we should have known about Fort Hood are usually the same people who are going to be against a registry for guns. And the irony is that's the only thing that would have stopped Hassan from committing his acts. So take that what it's worth. But next time you hear a senator talking about how many failures we had and how many, how bad our intelligence community is, ask them, okay, would you support a registry to prevent people on the no-fly list and the watch lists to obtain guns? And they will say no. So take it what it's worth. You can feel free to disagree with me on that. I know I'm being a little political on that, but I see that a little bit, and I get a little bit cringeworthy. We'll say that. Underwear bomber, same thing. The movie's pretty damning about the intel failures and really that, but one of the failures they bring up is his dad coming in and saying, "Hey, my son is a threat." Fair enough. But do you know how many times the FBI and the fusion centers and local law enforcement get threats saying my boyfriend, my girlfriend, my friend, my coworker, I think he works with terrorists? They get a lot of those threats. If they investigated those with the manpower, there would be that's the only thing the FBI would be doing. So just, again, take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. They also bring in the TIE databases, and they're actually pretty accurate there, that the TIE database has too many people, too many people, too many poison pens in there, too many people that aren't related to terrorism in the TIE database. So that's a pretty accurate statement brought up in the underwear in the BBC documentary. The one thing I also want to say in the BBC documentary, having worked at TSA, they show you the underwear bomber would not have blown up the aircraft, would not have pierced the skin. If you talk to the explosive experts at TSA, they will disagree with you. They will say that due to increased pressure at 20,000 feet, the explosion is magnified and it will cause more damage than you would see on the ground. So just again, kind of keep that in mind. But again, you see the intel failures. We see Fort Hood. You see the underwear bomber. One paper topic that was pretty good that I got a couple of years ago was someone through the visa, the problems with visa requirements, and they used the not Fort Hood, but the BBC, the underwear documentary, the Boston bombing issue, and they talked about in depth about how our visa system is broken and how intelligence isn't gleaned from our visa system. So that was a pretty good topic. He went in depth. Another paper that I got that was pretty good, they talked about how the DHS fusion centers, which I touched on in the lectures, how those, if properly utilized, could have stopped a Fort Hood, could have stopped a Boston Marathon bombing. Again, those are all great paper topics, and I hope that this topic definitely made you think about what you want to have your final paper on. So that covers kind of week 6. Week 7 preview, two topics, independent topics are covered. The first is leadership targeting. That is obviously a pretty controversial subject. When is it worth it? When is it effective? Is it ever not worth it? And I would obviously listen to the lectures, watch the video, and then come to your own mind. And that's the one thing I'd want to say on the discussion section is actually tell me when you think leadership targeting is effective, when you think it should not be employed, when the costs are too great for the outcome that you desire. And then the final section is on the domestic jihadist threat. That has come up in the last 5 years or so. I give several reasons why the U.S. citizens are actually participating in terrorism, participating in overseas jihadist movements. And I give some explanation for that, and the readings and my lectures shed some light on that. So again, just a reminder, just wrapping it up, Adobe Connect session this Thursday. I look forward to your thoughts on the discussion boards, and if there's any questions or issues, please let me know.